Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to NSPS Radio Hour. Thanks for joining us.
And stand by. Technical difficulties here.
No, it's not technical. It's just a screw up.
That would be producer Dave in the background, who's fixing everything. But you are tuned into America's Web Radio. This is On Point with Victor. Bear with us, folks. You know it's a Tuesday, and sometimes it feels like a Monday. But you are tuned into America's Web Radio. This is Victor Armendariz. You are listening to On Point with Victor, the next evolution in talk radio. So I am Victor Armendariz, and I'll spell that out for you in case you're new to the show. ARMENDARIZ, as in zebra. And folks, check us out. Go to the America's Web Radio page. You'll find us live. We are broadcasting live on Facebook. If you go to YouTube and just search America's Web Radio, and you will find the YouTube page, and where we do live shows and we replay live shows. You can find us all the time. And if you're a listener to this show, and again, I thank you so much because many of you are, and every week we seem to get new listeners. Please go on to the YouTube and like the page. It really, really, really will help us out, as well as Facebook and Facebook Live. You know, just find us everywhere. Find us on Instagram. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. So I just, that's just a little bit of, how do they say it these days? A little bit of office work we wanted to get out of the way here this morning. But we love having you. And, I don't know if you guys want to look at my ugly mug here for the whole show, but I encourage it. It is fun always to watch the show. I get, the questions I get asked quite a bit are, what's it like doing a radio show, and what's it like being in the studio behind the mic? And it's a blast. And through Facebook Live now you can watch and you can participate, because you can ask me questions during the show, and I recommend it. I like to be challenged. Not everybody that's listening to me agrees. So if you want to hop on Facebook and you can ask me a question live, and I'll answer them. I'll get to them, as many of them as I can. So I love doing it. And Instagram as well. You can fire off questions through Instagram and through Twitter. But if you really want instant access to me, get on Facebook Live, and you can fire questions away. And it's a lot of fun, folks. You'll enjoy being part of the show. So I am actually going to have to take a moment here and turn my own volume down so that I'm not interfering with myself. So, all right, let's get on with this. So as I mentioned before, this is America's Web Radio, and you're listening to On Point with Victor. So I'm going to forget his name, so I'm not even going to go there. So let's just get this party started. I want to start by asking all you listeners out there to keep. There were 3 soldiers in Afghanistan that lost their lives this over the weekend, and I wanted you just to ask you to keep their families and the people around them, keep their thoughts and prayers, keep thoughts and prayers in your minds over these 3 soldiers and their families, what they're going through right now. But over the weekend, we did lose 3 soldiers in Afghanistan. This was a apparent attack by the Taliban. And I, if you're caught up on the news, we have been in so-called peace talks with the Taliban and the government of Afghanistan. And, I'm not going to get into a whole lot, but sitting down with a terrorist group like the Taliban to negotiate, I understand why they're doing it. I can't say I'm really for it. Especially that while we're supposed to be negotiating, they're attacking and killing our American soldiers. So there's supposed to be a ceasefire when these talks are going on, and obviously, the Taliban is not participating in those ceasefires. So, this is what irritates me to no end. This is where the kind of president I would be, and I can just tell you what I would do. If something like this happened and I'm negotiating and your group goes off and kills 3 of my soldiers, well, I'm going to annihilate you, which is what I think probably what we're going to have to do. I hope, Trump has done a great job of untying the hands of the military. We've almost eradicated ISIS, and it might be time to just go in and eradicate the Taliban. These bozos are talking out of both sides of their mouth. They're coming and trying to sit down saying they want to negotiate, and then they're going off setting bombs and roadside bombs, doing everything they can to kill as many as they can. And we don't need to stand for that. If we're going to be in Afghanistan, if we're going to help that government, then we need to take out the Taliban. That's my opinion. That is not the necessarily the opinion of anyone else. This is on point with Victor, and that's why you're going to hear my opinion. But it really just ticks me off anytime we lose a serviceman or woman. So just keep those soldiers in your thoughts and prayers, because they gave the ultimate sacrifice. So those are just some ideas I have for Afghanistan from my point of view. Just, me sitting here, of course, I'm not over there, but I wouldn't put up with that kind of stuff. And the other thing we need to do is figure out what role is Iran playing in this, because I would get over there and find out where those IEDs are coming from. We already know a lot of them are coming from Iran. So that's another problem that's going to have to be tackled. And luckily, Trump is all over this. They just designated the Iranian Royal Guard a terrorist group, because there you have another group that was posing as a legitimate military arm, but all they're doing is going over into Syria and some other surrounding countries and planting IEDs. And it wouldn't surprise me a bit if we find out the IED that killed these 3 soldiers this past weekend in Afghanistan. Wouldn't surprise me a bit if that IED or those bomb materials came from Iran. So there's a whole, another issue there that's going to have to be tackled. And like I said, luckily we have a president in the White House right now. We have an administration that is looking at these things. They are going after, they are doing things that need to be done. They're doing things that should have been done years ago, starting with declaring the Iranian National Guard a terrorist group. So we're headed in the right direction there. But like I said before, we don't ever want to see us losing soldiers, because we're sitting at a peace table. We're having peace talks, and then the very people that you're supposedly having peace talks with are sending out bomb squads. So again, it really, really chaps my backside, and we've got to get on top of this, and we cannot let it go on. So now I want to move on to some basics. I want to, I've been just every day I sit back and I'll have all these thoughts going through my head, and I see what's going on, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing. And it just, you can't help but have these thoughts going through my mind about the way the country's going, the way the country's headed. And I'm always asking myself, why do people think the way they think? Why are people so willing to give up liberty? And then you go back and you look at some of the writings from the founding fathers, where liberty was cherished, and they even made more than one statements and wrote more than one time that liberty is far more important than so-called security, and anyone who would give up liberty in place of security deserves neither. So we need to go back to that, to those principles. And the reason why we've gotten off those principles is probably because the Department of Education. So that's a whole nother topic that I might touch on a little later. So anyway, so I have these thoughts no matter what I'm doing over the weekend, what I'm doing dailies. I cannot help but have these thoughts about what the freedoms that people are giving up so willingly. So one of the things that I want to talk about is when it comes to these political issues, what government, let's just say what government never does, or what they use when it comes to political issues. Here are some things I wanted to talk about. Government bureaucrats and establishment politicians basically lose all sense, or all common sense, or all sense of logic when they go to Washington. That has to be something in the water in Washington, that when these bureaucrats get there, when the politicians get there, lobbyists, that they are just losing all sense of common sense. Washington must be void. It must be the only place let's just say the only place in the United States that is void of common sense. And what do I mean by this? So think about this. So when a politician or bureaucrat comes up with an idea after idea after idea. So when they sit up there in these so-called think tanks and they're looking at different issues, or they're creating issues, or they're creating crisis, so they can come up with idea after idea after idea to impose on the American people, what's the one or two or three questions that they never stop and ask themselves? So one would be, how does this actually work? When was do you think one of these bureaucrats or politicians, when they come up with these grandiose ideas for a grandiose problem that they created, that they stop and say, well, how is this actually going to work? And then, have they thought it long term? Have they really looked at it and thought long term, what are the consequences going to be of the actions that are going to take place when this program or this brilliant thought I have goes into place? Those two questions aren't asked. Then this one isn't asked. What are the perverse incentives that this program is going to cause, or these actions that we take? What perverse incentives are they going to cause? I guarantee you they never ask that one. And then how about, what are the laws of unintended consequences going to be? Why don't they ever ask that? We have history that shows us after program after program after program of these that comes out of Washington, where unintended consequences have just really, really hurt people. And this is common American citizens that get hurt every day by unintended consequences from a feel-good policy. So those questions need to be asked. So we as voters, we as American people, we need to stand up and start demanding that these questions be asked. Call it a litmus test, call it what you want, but never should there be a group of politicians, left or right, or bureaucrats, especially unelected bureaucrats. Never should they be allowed to sit and write law and write programs that are going to be put into action, which are going to be forced on the American people, without asking these basic questions. How is it going to actually work? Have you thought of the long term? What are the perverse incentives that this program will cause or may cause? What are the unintended consequences that may happen because of these laws or this program? Those things have to be asked. I mean, it's common sense. And this is Common Sense and Logic Radio with On Point with Victor. So no one should be surprised when I bring up common sense questions. So those are questions. So think about that. So all of these things, none of those questions are asked. Even in a town where they spend millions on analyzing everything and millions to put together programs and analyze programs, why don't they ever analyze the ones before they're implemented? So that, they happily waste millions and millions and millions of dollars on these things. So, all right, folks, we're going to pause right here. We're coming up on our first break. So you hang tight. On the other side of this break, we're going to get into a little bit more of what I got to say about these establishment bureaucrats and politicians. So you hang right there. You're listening to On Point with Victor, America's Web Radio. We'll be right back.
The disease of addiction is a life-altering challenge, not just for the person suffering its effects, but also for the family and friends who support and love the one caught in its grasp. What should be the course of treatment? Who is the best person to render treatment? And what is the best place to go for the care that is needed? We know that you want answers to these and many more questions. Call 770-696-9862 and speak to a representative of the Atlanta Healing Center. They can tailor a program specifically designed to address the needs of the person suffering with an addiction, or give you guidance as to where that help may be found. Information is the key, and the trained staff at AHC is here to assist. If you wish, you can also get more information on the website located at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Your auto love and investment demands the best, and for 45 years, Passport Transport has been meeting those demands. From manufacturers to the one-car collectors and all other facets of the auto industry and antique auto hobby. The first and the finest with unequaled service and peace of mind. Passport Transport, your auto transportation company. Contact PassportTransport.com with your need today. Passport Transport.
Hi, this is Steve Ronaldo, host of the Classic Car Show on America's Web Radio. Just talking to you about antique car insurance. I think that if you're looking for the best coverage for your classic car, consider J.C. Taylor Insurance. I've been my insurer for years in this hobby and have the top rating of all of the insurance companies in the hobby. When you get ready for insurance, call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com on the internet.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
To America's Web Radio. This is On Point with Victor. Common sense and logic. That's what you're going to hear right here on Point with Victor. I don't make things up, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. And again, I recommend anyone who wants to challenge me, please jump on Facebook and fire away. We can have fun with this because we are live on Facebook, ladies and gentlemen. We're live on YouTube. But thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I really love it when you guys tune in. And thanks so much for new listeners that we get every week. So, all right. So I was talking about the questions that Washington never asks before they try and develop some grandiose plan or idea that they come up with. They love coming up with programs and they love forcing on the American people, but they don't ask basic questions on what's going to happen and what are the results going to be. So that's where we left off. So, you know, I want to just to mention again, in a town where politicians happily waste millions and millions of taxpayer dollars analyzing all these, again, ideas and grandiose ideas that they come up with, and then they fail. And they fail one after another after another. And why aren't these questions asked beforehand when we've got history showing us of one program failing after program after program? I mean, it really, really is baffling to me that we just ignore history. And I'm afraid that that's a product of education, that we can go through elementary school and through high school and through college with either A, history being ignored, or B, history being changed. There's a lot of revisionist history that goes on. I mean, I could name some off the top of my head. One in the most recently, and I'll deviate a little bit here, but most recently, the revisionist history that's going on in the media and with the Democrats is accusing Donald Trump of separating children from their mothers and from their families at the border. This was an Obama policy. If you go back, look up the Flores case. Flores, let me say this properly. Flores. Look at that case back in the Obama years. The separating children from their families was an Obama policy that was enacted under Obama, and Obama had no problem with it. And then Trump comes in, and that program is being continued. That policy was being continued. You can't come in as president and snap your fingers and stop everything the previous administration had done. It takes a while to get rolling. It takes a while for a new president to put his people in place. Even when he gets his head of departments in place, you still have a lot of hangovers from the previous administration. And what we have seen this time in this past transition from 8 years of Obama to the first 2 years of Trump, we've seen unprecedented number of hangovers, of political hangovers and bureaucrat hangovers actively seeking to obstruct the new president's team and policy. That is going on, folks. And if you think it's not, then you're kidding yourself. If you're so much married to the letter D and you don't think that's happening, then you're kidding yourself. And it may have happened before. It may have happened when we came out of the Bush years and went into the Clinton years. This isn't just Democrats doing to Republicans or Republicans doing to Democrats, because I'm sure if we go back in history, we could see some similar things that may have happened. But right now, we're talking about recent history. And the Obama hangovers have just been nothing but a menace to the current administration. And a lot of that was perpetrated from this fake hoax and fake story, and the hoax, I shouldn't say fake hoax, that's kind of redundant, but the hoax that has been perpetrated on the American people about Russia collusion and all this mess about the 2016 election. All of these things were done by design, and it was to discredit the incoming presidency, the incoming administration. But again, you can look it up. You can go back to 2014 where the pictures came from that look like cages. Now, folks, no one had kids in cages. These are areas that are roped off by fence, or they're marked off by fencing, or you have to have a detention center at the border. You can't not have a detention center at the border. And if you look at those pictures, they go back to 2014. Need I remind you that that was the Obama administration? And before that, look at the Flores case that allowed the policy of separating children at the border. Obama implemented it, and Obama had no problem with it. But now today, well, not just today, all through 2016, well, let's just say 2017, going into 2018, all you've heard is this was Trump separating children, Trump, as if Trump himself were down at the border snatching a child from a mother's arms or a father's arms or an uncle's arms or a drug dealer's arms, or a gang member's arms, that Trump is grabbing these children physically and throwing them in a dog pen, or throwing them in a pen for that would be held for dogs, or a crate. This is what the media would have you believe. And this is why I tell you, if you're getting your news from one source, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Because if you just watch CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, NBC, PBS, then you probably think that Donald J. Trump was standing at the border snatching snatching children from the mothers and fathers and gang members and whoever else with one arm, and holding the door open to a dog crate in the other arm and throwing that child in. That's what you would believe if you were listening, if you only watched certain news media, the lamestream media. To even today at a press conference with the Egyptian president, the media couldn't help themselves but ask Trump to his face why he was caging children. Well, is he going to cage children again and all this? Because let me remind you, it was the Trump administration that put an end to the Obama policy of separating children from their parents. I mean, these are just facts, and you can sugarcoat the story any way you want, which the liberals do, or the Democrats are doing, or the media is doing. But the facts are the facts. The policy of children being separated was an Obama era policy. And the person who wrote and signed an executive order to end it, Donald J. Trump. So you go ahead and hate Trump all you want, but you can't change history to fit your narrative. And that's what's going on, and that's what needs to stop. You know, one day, you Democrats out there, your candidate's going to win the presidency. You will have one day again, we'll have a Democrat president. Do you want the Republican establishment or the media, do you want them all turning on you and accusing your president of all kinds of ridiculous things, or coming up with hoaxes, or taking policies from a previous administration and then trying to change the history and change the narrative to make it a policy of your president? You know, you need to think about this, because there probably is no truer saying than the saying, what goes around comes around. I mean, it happens in your life. It happens in my life. It happens in every day in everyone's life. It's no different for presidential administrations. What goes around comes around. So how you are treating this president and how you are spending your life energy, your sweat equity, if you choose to go out and have these ridiculous tantrum fits because you don't understand true history, or you don't know real history. I mean, you really need to get your news from other organizations and then come to your own conclusion. I'm not telling you to dump CNN, MSNBC, and CBS, and ABC, and NBC, and all of those. I'm not telling you to dump them, but I'm telling you, you got to get you've got to open up. You got to look at other points of view. and then come to your own conclusion. Because if you're just being a follower, then you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing your family a disservice. So, all right, we're coming up to another. Oh, no, we're not. I'm ahead of myself. Man, I really need to. That's what happens in radio. I get rolling and then I get ahead of myself. So I've got a few more minutes here. So we're going to keep.
I'll just go ahead and fess up to the fact that you can't read a digital watch.
Well, that may be true too. And that was producer Dave.
High tech.
Yes. High tech and me, we just don't get along every time or all the time. But I do have a little bit more time. So we're going to we're going to push on here. So I mentioned before I got off on the revisionist history rant, which is easy to do because, ladies and gentlemen, there's history being changed all the time in schools and in colleges, as coming from the hard left, coming from the progressives, even Democrats. There are Democrats sitting on the Hill today that are acting like they don't know who Attorney General Barr is, and they're accusing that man of everything but being a son of God, and it's ridiculous. But I digress. Let me get back to what I was talking about earlier. What I opened the show with bureaucrats and politicians and the establishment coming up with program after program, idea after idea, and never asking basic questions before they try and force it onto the American people. So let me give you a prime example of what I'm talking about, which is perfect example for today, is healthcare, the healthcare battle. So the battle that's going on right now with healthcare, that's going on in our politics, the battle now is, do the Republicans have a plan? What's the Republicans' plan for healthcare? So think about this, folks. The most pertinent question coming from the left and coming from the media is, do the federal elected Republicans, and I'm talking about the Washington establishment, I'm talking about the people who are elected and sitting in Washington who are career politicians, the pertinent question seems to be, when are those guys going to have a plan? Or what is their plan? What is their plan to control your health care? What is their plan to get between the doctor and you? I mean, think about that. That's what the question is. That the demand from the left and the mainstream media, and half the country apparently, is, how is the government going to come up with a plan to run your life? That's what about that. We're going into the next break. So you hang on tight. We'll be right back with On Point with Victor on the other side of this break.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Ronaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mike Karuchak. Have you ever wondered what doctors talk about amongst themselves? If you do, join us on the Doctor's Lounge and hear the doctors' conversations amongst themselves. Join me and my co-host, Dr. Hal Schertz, every Thursday morning, 8 to 9 a.m.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we're back. Welcome to On Point with Victor. I am Victor Armendariz, and you are listening to America's Web Radio, the next evolution in talk radio. So thanks so much for listening. I really love it. We get new listeners every week. I can't thank you enough. It humbles me every time we get a new listener. and I've got some people firing off some questions on social media, so I love it. But again, thanks for tuning in. Let's get back to some what I was talking about before the break, is how we as American people, or at least half of this country, is, and unfortunately, it's probably more than half now, and it just really tears at my heart. But so many are willing to give up control of their life to a bunch of non-elected bureaucrats, a bunch of elected establishment politicians, lobbyists who are just lobbying for their back pocket when it comes down to it. All of these are the people that so many people in this country are willing to turn their life over to. And what I mean by that, if you're willing to turn your health care, if you're willing to turn your income, because there are people who want a basic income, if you're willing to let food stamps rule the way you eat every week, if you're willing to use the unemployment office as your stop every month, if you're willing to, I mean, I could go on, but these are the things. If you're willing to do all of those things and sit back, then you are allowing unelected bureaucrats, elected career politicians. Let me give you an example. One of the presidential candidates who's leading the pack, and in my opinion is probably going to win the nomination, the whitest, oldest Democrat or guy the Democrats could find, Bernie Sanders. Now, you look at Bernie Sanders' history, that man's never held a job. That man's never had to sign a paycheck. That man's never had to budget his life based on a job that he had to offer his sweat equity to. The only thing he's done and the way he's made his money is through the taxpayers being elected to office. That's been his career. So a career politician wants to tell you that he's going to determine your health care. Why on earth, as freedom-loving, liberty-seeking Americans, why on earth would we have any citizen that wants to sit out there and go, hey, you know what? I'm going to give up my health care, my quality of life. I'm going to hand it over to Bernie Sanders, a career politician, not a doctor, not an educated person in your area or maybe of the ailment you may be feeling. No. Just a guy who figured out, hey, if I get elected, I can live off the taxpayer. And not only can I live off the taxpayer, I can write law and introduce law and come up with all these ideas where it'll make me feel really good, but I'll impose it on the American people. And when I impose it on the American people, it ain't for me. It's just for them. So the elitist class, the ruling class, they don't have to worry about any of this stuff that they push on the American people. Just you, the American public, the American citizen, you, the class that shall be ruled. Folks, that's the kind of power you're giving the establishment Washington. And I use Bernie Sanders as an example because here is a guy who hasn't held a job. I'm telling you, the man was elected years and years and years ago, and he has spent his life, his working adult life, in Congress or in some Senate or in some type of local office. The man has been elected year after year after year after year, and that's been his life career. So he went from meager earnings to living off the taxpayer. This is a Bernie Sanders who off the taxpayer has 2 or 3 homes. I don't know how many cars, flies around in private jets. You work 40, 60, 80 plus hours a week. Where's your private jet? I mean, but yet you're willing to give up your health care, your economy, your, I mean, I could just go on and on, your power grids. You're willing to get the car you drive. You're willing to give this up to a politician like Bernie Sanders or a newly elected politician like Alexandria Cortez. who, no offense to bartenders, I myself was a bartender. That's how I got through college. But I wouldn't expect somebody to have come back then and plucked me out of the bartending world and throw me up to Washington. I wouldn't expect them to listen to all these grandiose ideas I have, because I had a Karl Marx teacher in college filling my head full of how wonderful socialism is. I mean, we continually, I'm going to get off on another tangent, so I'm going to stop myself right there so I can get back to my point. So we're going to go back to using healthcare as an example, and how the battle right now, according to the left and the Democrats and the media and any, the lamestream media and the progressives, the battle right now is, well, the Republicans have to come up with a plan. We have to leave Obamacare in place, which has been an absolute disaster. And we have to leave all that in place because the Republicans have to come up with a plan, because the federal government has to come up with a plan. And because the Republicans are in charge, they have to come up with a plan. So ponder that. We're going to go to the next break. This is flying by. We will be right back, ladies and gentlemen. You're tuned into On Point with Victor. You stay right there. We'll be right back.
45 years of experience is behind the most trusted name in auto transportation. Passport Transport, the first and finest today. That's why Passport Transport is the preferred auto transport for major auto manufacturers, concours, museums, tours, and collectors, and should be your choice from across the state to across the country. When you have the need, go to PassportTransport.com and enjoy the peace of mind referenced experience will give you. Passport Transport.
The disease of addiction is a life-altering challenge, not just for the person suffering its effects, but also for the family and friends who support and love the one caught in its grasp. What should be the course of treatment? Who is the best person to render treatment? And what is the best place to go for the care that is needed? We know that you want answers to these and many more questions. Call 770-696-9862 and speak to a representative of the Atlanta Healing Center. They can tailor a program specifically designed to address the needs of the person suffering with an addiction, or give you guidance as to where that help may be found. Information is the key, and the trained staff at AHC is here to assist. If you wish, you can also get more information on the website located at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
YouTube, and please like us. It really helps, and plus it allows me to see who's tuning in, and then I can bring you guys in. One thing that I love to do here at America's Web Radio is bring the audience in. I love it, and audience interaction, that's what makes this the next evolution in talk radio, because it's not like we're just taking calls and letting people waste other people's time. We actually will answer questions and let the audience participate, and we do it live. So anyway, welcome back, On Point with Victor. I have a whole lot more that I was going to get to on my rant here against, or at least I shouldn't say against, but it's a rant on, I want people to realize how willing they are to give up so much control of their life. But I have some things to go over, but I may deviate here, because I think I'm going to have to go to the phones and go. One of the things that's happening today is Attorney General Barr has been dragged in front of Congress, and I think we have the luxury right now of having Marc the Shark on the line. Marc, are you there? Stand by, folks. Stand by. Marc, are you there? All right, we might be having a couple of difficulties here, so let me move on a minute. But we may have Marc joining us, and we're going to get into some of this going on with Barr, with Attorney General Barr, because the Congress has drug him in to quiz him about the Mueller report, and the only reason that they're bringing him in is because they want to accused Barr of being a liar. They're accusing now Mueller, who was supposed to be the epitome of character. They're accusing him of being I mean, it's crazy what they're doing and how they're treating him. So we'll stand by. We may go back to the phones in just a second if Mark gets back on. Actually, let me check now. Mark, are you there? Stand by, folks. Stand by, folks. We're having.
Still no Mark?
I'm not hearing Mark. That's okay. Producer Dave is on the case, so he's gonna work on that and see what's going on there. You know, ladies and gentlemen, radio just doesn't go perfect every day. And technology, you know, remember at the beginning of the show, we were talking about how I can be a technology numbnut. And so sometimes it isn't my fault. It's just technology doesn't want to cooperate. So, all right, well, while producer Dave is dealing with that, he will signal me when I need to go back to the phones. But right now, let me go back on to what I was talking about. Is having these government bureaucrats. And ladies and gentlemen, these bureaucrats are not elected. These bureaucrats that are brought into the swamp that is Washington, D.C., that political swamp, these bureaucrats are brought in, and they are not elected. They're brought in by the elected career politicians to help them come up with these ridiculous plans. So right now, okay, I'm going to go back and check to the phones. Mark, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I got you loud and clear now. So,
all right.
So that's wonderful, Mark. I'm so glad that you were able to call in because I want to deviate. And so today, and listeners out there, ladies and gentlemen, bear with me. I know we jumped around a little bit today, but this is a topic that we just got to get to today, because the Congress ran. Well, let's face it, it's the House, and it's run by Democrats, and they drug Attorney General Barr into the House today. And they, Mark, they basically are pretending like, A, they don't know the guy, they've never met the guy, that it's not like they didn't approve him as Attorney General under Bush #1. And then they approved him, a month or so ago for Attorney General for Trump. And now they're acting as if none of that happened. Now they're basically calling Barr a liar to his face. So, Mark, let's just for the listener's sake, is it not the law that Attorney General Barr cannot release any special counsel report that's unredacted?
Well, okay, it's very interesting because under Clinton is when that rule was passed. That law was passed under Clinton, that you can't release the special prosecutor's report.
Exactly. It was the Democrat Party that was so furious when, and I'm going to forget the Attorney General back then that released the report, but the special counsel back then, and we're talking about the late 90s when Clinton got in trouble for perjury.
That was Starr, I believe.
Yes, it was Ken Starr. So when that report came out, there was no rule, and they just released it to the public. So you had all these details about, let's just say, let me be as clean as I can here, but you had details come out about cigars and certain way the cigars were used on certain interns. And that was just some of what was coming out in that, what came out in that report. So the Democrats demanded and changed the law at that time and said, never again will a special counsel's report be released to the public or to Congress without the Attorney General.
Never again the second time, or never again the first time.
Right. Right.
They were for it until they were against it.
They were for it until they were against it. And in the immortal words of John Kerry, I was for it before I was against it. But you're absolutely right there, Mark. So listeners can understand, let me just make that clear. It is a law today put forth by the Democrats of the 90s that said no special counsel report shall be released to the public or the Congress without the Attorney General redacting what needs to be redacted and then releasing it.
Well, they were trying to, I listened to some of the hearings this morning, and they were basically trying to put words in his mouth. And he's a very seasoned attorney. Not only is he an attorney, but he's second time out as the Attorney General. So, what the one question that no one's asked again, and I hate to bring it up, is I always thought there were two sides of a coin. Unless it's a Democrat coin, then there's only one side. Is that the way this works?
Exactly. Well, there always is two sides to a coin, or two sides of the mouth when it comes to Democrats, but go ahead.
I see this as, how is it that Mueller spent over $27.2 million of our taxpayer dollars to investigate Russian collusion, yet he never touched on the Uranium One deal. Who gave him the marching orders? Okay? Who gave him? Because the original letter was pretty general. Investigate Russian collusion. It didn't say only investigate Trump.
Absolutely. And Mark, that wasn't the only thing. I mean, you had Uranium One, you had an email server that was not protected, you had emails going out, you had classified information going out. I mean, all of these things happened.
And you had people lying about it before Congress.
Absolutely, including Hillary herself. And then you had FBI agents lying about it at the top level, not your run-of-the-mill agents who work hard every day, but the leadership, unfortunately, that they had to deal with, like Peter Strzok and Comey. They were lying every day. And then we don't, there's breaking news over the weekend, end of last week, over this weekend, that we'll get to maybe in another show, about the Ukrainian. You know, we have Ukrainian leaders right now who are saying, why aren't you asking us for the evidence we have of when the Hillary campaign was contacting them and they were actually helping the Hillary campaign?
How about, wait. How about, let's go to the side of that coin, which doesn't exist in the Democrat world, but that side of the coin is, how about Joe Biden and his son?
Right.
He got all those lucrative million-dollar, multi-million-dollar contracts while he's flying on Air Force One. Dad's using his influence to get him these contracts. And I'm saying, listen, if you want to go after Trump, then you better be going after everybody who does. They didn't get to where they are by not doing it.
Well,
that's the problem.
You're absolutely right, Mark. If you're willing to go after a hoax, then you darn well should be willing to go after the evidence that's right in front of your face. And you don't have to dig far to see the evidence. And Mark, you already named Uranium One, and I just talked about, look up the Ukrainian government this past last week and this weekend, what they're saying. All of this goes to Hillary. And you know,
Joe Biden had a prosecutor fired and dismissed because he was about to commence an investigation against his son.
Wow. Now, in the Democrat world, wouldn't that be called obstruction?
Well, let's say he withheld, I believe that it was a couple of billion or $1 billion worth of aid to them, unless they dismissed this prosecutor who was about to commence an action against his son.
So,
I mean, what do you call that?
See, there again, evidence of obstruction. But in the Democrat world and progressive world, you just have to accuse someone where there's no evidence, and that's to be believed. And when there is evidence, oh, no, that's not to be looked at. I mean, that's the way we're living now.
I would go back and look at how many cases over history that gave immunity to 5 people close to a targeted person and didn't get any information for that immunity. Didn't get anything.
Right.
0 convictions, 0 investigations, nothing.
It's crazy, Mark. Hang on right there, Mark. We got to take a break here. But this is a quick break. We'll be right back. You hang on, and Mark, you hang on, and listeners hang on. We'll be right back.
Web radio on the America's Broadcasting Network, as a matter of fact, and we're certainly glad to have you listening today to On Point, as well as many other shows that we have. And stay tuned this afternoon for a very new show that we're very excited about, called Lock and Load. And I think everybody can address that, particularly anyone that was in the military can come up with what that show is going to be about. Lock and Load. You'll laugh. Anyway, don't want to get carried away with another world, another life, another time. But all of that helps save a lot of lives. And I want to remind everybody that you can pick us up live on YouTube anytime, and also now on Facebook Live. We have different shows that will be on Facebook Live. And after Lock and Load, then we'll have Detailing Addiction. And you can guess what that's about as well, probably. Smoking and joking. Anyway, I want you to tune into that. Facebook Live, YouTube. Please go to YouTube, look up the shows, and then say like. You don't know what that would mean to poor Victor. Anyway. A lot, yes. So, with that being said, we're going to come back. We're going to run one promo, and then we'll be back with On Point. And every time I say that, I get this picture of the dog.
This is Daryl Pullis inviting you to listen to America's Homegrown Veggie Show right here every Saturday morning at 10 Eastern Time. Great guests, great tips, and valuable information about growing your own vegetables, fruits, and herbs.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. That was the accelerated thrash version of my intro music by Pointless. Welcome back. Mark, are you there? Oh, I may have lost Mark, but Mark, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. So we're back with On Point with Victor, and I am on the phones now with Mark, and we're talking Attorney General Barr and the Mueller report and how dubious and absolutely ridiculous that the Democrats are being, and the progressives and the lamestream media. So, Mark, we talk about how there's so much evidence, and yet the special counsel felt no need to look at the other side. Now, Mark, what am I correct in? Was not the mission, so to speak, of the special counsel to investigate Russia collusion for the 2016 election, not just Trump campaign?
They must have read that memo the same way they read coins, one-sided.
I mean,
it just seems to me that there was so much evidence, the Steele dossier.
Mm-hmm.
How much, talking about hunting dogs, they could have used one and they would have found it faster than Mueller and a lot cheaper than $27.2 million.
Mark, they're saying that the money that Mueller spent may surpass $30 million.
Yeah, well, I would bet it's going to be a lot more because he's still active and he's still getting billed per hour.
And that is insane. And now he's getting billed to be, which the Democrats won't admit to, but he's actually been participating with Attorney General Barr. Everything in that summary, Attorney General Barr showed to Mueller first, and then Mueller okayed it. So it's not like Mueller's out there.
There was apparently one opportunity for Mueller to take part in it,
mm-hmm.
and he declined at the beginning, and then he said, okay, I got to take care of this.
Yeah.
So he jumped back in. But the bottom line is that they're looking to get the entire report for what? So that they can go on another fishing expedition.
Oh.
They want people who were not charged? How dare they?
And they want to smear people's reputation. The whole reason, Mark, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have
You're never wrong, Victor.
Oh, you're too kind. So in this Mueller report, we have grand jury testimony. That is not to be for everyone to see.
That's kind of sacred. That's kind of
exactly
sacred.
Because there are people who were witnesses. There are people who gave testimony who did it because they were under incognito. Let's say.
Now wait a second. Now, by raise of hands, let's ask who thinks that any of that report won't be leaked.
Oh,
wait, this is radio. Go ahead. Everyone raise their hand.
It may be radio, but I can tell you there are no hands up, except maybe from some of my listeners, Democrat listeners. But that's going to be leaked. It's going to be leaked.
It's going to come right out as if they just released it out to the public. And anything that they show them is going to be going out the back door, just like everything else.
And anyone who thinks that's not going to be leaked, I'm amazed that it hasn't been leaked already, but it will be leaked. And
listen, I still can't figure out how Adam Schiff is still in charge of the lack of intelligence committee.
Adam Schiffless Schiff, and I could say more things, but I don't want to get in trouble. But I'm glad you brought him up, Mark. you talk about evidence. Do you know there's a tape, and ladies and gentlemen, don't take my word for it. Go out there. All you got to do, it's not hard to find, but there is a recording of Adam Schiff on the phone with what he thought, or who he thought were Russian agents, and they were telling him they had naked pictures of Trump. We have naked pictures of Trump and Putin, of course. And his question was, well, did you give these to Trump, or does Putin have possession? Of course. So there is recording, Mark, of Adam Schiff on the phone with who he thought was Russian agents, and he was asking, not only asking what information they had, he was asking if Putin had possession and if he could get copies of it, and that he would have staff follow up so they could verify and get copies.
So is that anything illegal? Are we kidding?
Well, if we're operating under that collusion or looking for opposition research, if we're now operating that's illegal, then Adam Schiff should be at the top of the list, right next to Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton's team's the one that came up with the lawsuit.
Let's round out the triangle with Comey.
And then Comey would be the exact, absolutely.
And how about Loretta? You don't think she knew?
Yeah. Oh boy, let's go back to the on the tarmac. Who was she sitting talking to? Oh, none other than the accused husband. And don't tell me they're talking about grandchildren, because she doesn't even have grandchildren.
Yeah, I heard that story too. That the grandchildren. That's about as true as the dossier.
Yeah. Well,
it's in the same author.
Well, again, you would have to be a skull full of mush that is married to the letter D to believe any of that story.
Listen, at the time, see, here's the thing, is they must get like a email or a talking sheet somehow every morning, because every news team on the left uses the same language. It's amazing. And I wish the Republicans would get that same fax machine, because then they could send out all their bullet points.
Either the same number or the express email. But Mark, you're 100% correct. And if people doubt me or doubt you, you could look that up too, and just look at NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, MSNBC. They all will use the same phrase. It's almost as if either the media is getting together, maybe led by CNN, and they say, okay, today's word of the day is, I mean, because
here's what really baffles me and really angers me to the extent where it troubles me that the United States has fallen this far. Just imagine if they would help Trump govern the United States instead of fighting him for everything he does. Just imagine for a moment where we'd be. We'd probably have 6% growth by now.
There's no doubt in my mind we would have 4 to 5 to 6%. No doubt in my mind. If just the Republicans, the establishment Republicans had a bit on board instead of buying into the Russian hoax.
Well, remember, they're all afraid of him because he's not one of the boys in the club.
Yeah. Well, Mark, that's what it comes down to. And I know we've talked about that before. The Washington establishment, and that's the establishment Democrat, well, it's all the Democrat Party and it's establishment Republicans, they do not like outsiders coming in and crashing their party.
Yeah, the Roman Republic.
Exactly. So, Mark, I've got to end it there. Thanks so much I know you got in late, but hey, that's what happens when you're in court. But thank you for being here. Thanks for calling in. Ladies and gentlemen,
everybody have a great week.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, and you guys will be back. Stay tuned, because the 3 o'clock hour is coming up, and we got a treat for you with Locked and Load. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the America's Broadcast Network.